wake that ass up.
In the morning.
The Breakfast Club.
Morning, everybody. It's DJ NV, Angela Yee, Charlamagne the Guy. We are the Breakfast Club. We got a special guest in the building. He's been here several times.
No, he hasn't.
Yes, he has.
Oh, on Zoom. Yeah.
And he's been here.
Yeah, I've been here in person.
With A-Rod.
With A-Rod.
Oh,
And then another
okay.
time, I think you weren't here. It was just me and you here.
I don't remember.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
he's been here numerous
All right.
times. We have
Okay,
Carlos
okay.
Watson, the co-founder and CEO of Ozy Media.
What's happening, Carlos?
Man, good to be here. It's been a difficult week, but good to be here.
A lot
Absolutely.
going on.
Yeah.
All right, before we get into that, I know
Right.
you always have to ask people, how are you doing? But like you said, it has been a difficult week. So how are you feeling?
You know what? Other than my mom passing, it probably is the toughest week I've had.
Really?
And I know people have tougher weeks, so I'm not confused. I know people have tougher weeks, so I'm not trying to put my week in that space. But it was a tough week. I love Ozy. I think we built something special. As a media company, it's not easy building anything
Break
for
everything
anybody.
down from the beginning, because a lot of people might not know what's
Who is
going on.
Carlos Watson?
Yeah.
Who is Ozy
What's
Media?
Ozy? Break the whole thing down. And he's a brother, ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't heard.
From Miami, live in California now. Worked on TV, doing shows at CNN, CNBC, MSNBC. Had worked in business before at McKinsey & Goldman. And a few years ago, for family reasons, decided to move to California and decided to start a media company called Ozy. And it started with newsletters, and then we grew into TV shows on Hulu, Amazon, PBS, BBC, A&E, others. We won an Emmy last year, so some strong work for our show with Oprah, which was great. And then podcasts. We've had a half dozen good podcasts, including doing some with iHeart, which has been great. And festivals. I think I've seen you guys around Ozy Fest in Central Park. So we built a nice company, 75 plus people, working with lots of great advertisers, doing good work. And about a week ago, there was a piece that I felt was a hit piece in the New York Times by a guy named Ben Smith that I felt was aimed to take us down. And it almost did. We suspended operations on Friday. It looked like we were going to wind down. And over the weekend, I ended up hearing from lots of people, some of our readers, some of our viewers, our listeners. I heard from some of our investors. I heard from some of our advertisers. I was really appreciative of that. And they were like, we need Ozy's voice in the world. Like, why are you going to go away? Don't let that happen. And so as embarrassing as it was in a way to kind of make a big announcement on Friday and then all of a sudden change your mind, I did do that and announced that Ozy's coming back, that Ozy's not going anywhere, the new Ozy.
Somebody told me that you and Ben might have some personal issues because he used to work at BuzzFeed, and BuzzFeed was trying to acquire Ozy, and you didn't.
Yeah.
So what happened? Because you said he took you down. He wrote a letter to take you down. What was in this letter? How did he try to take
Well, it was
you
an
down?
article. It
So
was
what
an
was it
article
about?
in the New York Times.
Yeah, so it was an article in the New York Times. There are two pieces to it. One piece is there was a bad incident where my co-founder presented himself as someone he wasn't, impersonated, in the middle of a fundraising call.
So he was a co-founder. So he has
Co-founder.
shares
So it
in
was
the
a call
company.
with Goldman Sachs.
Call with Goldman Sachs, presented himself as a YouTube executive. I think this was a serious mental health issue. I know some people haven't been in that space before, and so it's hard for them to conceive of that. But it's difficult.
But you
and
as
it's
a
real.
CEO had to know what was going to be said on that Goldman Sachs call. I mean, it was a call you're trying to raise $40 million.
You know what's interesting about that, Charlamagne, is that it's portrayed like that. But you know that whenever somebody makes a big decision like that, they don't have like one call. Like, it's 3 months, it's dozens of calls, it's in-person meetings. They want to meet your customers, they want to meet your employees, they want to talk to your other investors, they want to talk to people you don't even tell them to talk to. And so literally, we were far down the line. They had read all of our newsletters, they'd watched our TV shows, they had heard about our festivals, they'd liked our podcast, they talked to a bunch of our advertisers, they talked to TV execs that had bought shows from us. So they were far down the line, and this was one of the last things to do. And so it was really unfortunate. The good news is that they didn't invest, because it would be even a bigger problem.
That'd be like
Obviously,
fraud.
they did. Yep. And to their credit, they've been gracious. 3-4 months after that, they were like, "Look, that is what it was. We've known you for years. We know that's not who your company is. That your company is something much bigger." and they did a pretty big advertising deal with us, which, I don't think they would do.
Right. It wasn't the $40 million investment you were
Correct.
seeking, but they did still advertise.
They still did advertise, which is meaningful, and I still have lots of friends there. And
so you didn't know that your CEO was doing that? What happens in that moment in real time? You like, bro, what's wrong with you?
So I got a call from the guy. So I think the Goldman folks called the YouTube folks. The Goldman folks called the YouTube folks, who then his assistant called me. I realized what was happening, and it was tough. It was tough.
What's the time span of that though?
How
soon after the call?
In the same day. They called me probably, I bet, a couple of hours. I'm not sure, but I think they probably called me a couple of hours, and then I was on the phone with Goldman, and I was on the phone with Goldman the next day, and I was on the phone obviously with our investors and others, our board members, telling them what happened. I did.
What was the purpose of saying he was an exec at YouTube?
I really think it's something that doesn't make sense. I don't think it's something that makes sense. And I think he believes that it was a medical issue and a mental health issue. I think he thinks that that's not who he is. And I certainly, working with him for almost a decade, I hadn't experienced him like that before. And that doesn't mean it's not real, but I hadn't experienced him like that before. And so
was that the reason why they didn't invest?
It was. They were pretty close to saying yes, and they had plenty of phone calls with different people. They had read and watched and listened to all of our stuff. They had talked to our other investors. They were pretty far along. We had gotten pretty far along. So it was. You can imagine it was heartbreaking. And for us, I mean, one of the things that people don't talk about, they talk about $40 million, but this from trying to start something up. When you look at the other new media companies. Companies like BuzzFeed are raising $1 billion, or companies like Vice are raising $2 billion. And so $40 million is a lot of money, but to be really clear, after 8 years, I was going to be raising less than 10% of what they were raising. And yet we made something pretty special happen on it. So we lost that opportunity.
Did you sever ties with the COO?
Yep. We've asked him to step down.
Okay.
So,
there's a lot of people out there that say, reading that, this mental health is used as, you're just using it as a scapegoat.
Yep.
And that, he might have been saying that he worked at YouTube to say, hey, I'm a YouTube exec. This place the numbers are great, and this is why you should invest. And that, the whole mental health is just using it as a scapegoat to get around that.
Yeah, that's a very specific lie to tell.
Yep. I don't know what to say about it. And I know that skepticism is there, and I know that people are going to look into it. And I trust that Goldman looked into it, and I trust that if Goldman felt like it was something other than that they wouldn't have done a pretty meaningful, advertising partnership. YouTube, after this, continued to work with us, signed us a new partner, promoted some of our best episodes with Dr. Fauci and Ava DuVernay, and a couple months after that, gave us a written offer, Google, which is YouTube's parent, to invest $25 million. So I don't think they would do that if they thought that there was something broader wrong.
What about Ben though? Is there something personal between the guy who wrote the New York Times article?
So was it that incident that sparked the whole article in the New York Times that Ben wrote?
That sparked the whole article, but really I felt like part of that was salacious, and we can have a conversation about whether people's medical histories should be out there, and we can have a conversation about whether he should have even been allowed to write this piece. This is a guy who has been after us for several years. 2 years ago, in August, he sent me an email, copied to CEO in, said, I think you guys should get together and talk about the possibility of them buying us. They spent 3 months. BuzzFeed. From August 2019 to about November 20th, they spent about 3 months looking at our financials, looking at our traffic, talking to our team, having us meet their team, going all through that. And at the end of that, they gave us a written offer for $225 million. Now today, he's saying the company's junk. Why'd you spend 3 months and offer us hundreds of millions of dollars, and now you're saying it's junk?
And you turned down that offer.
We turned it down twice. And after that, he quit the company because he was on his last legs, and he was saying, I don't really feel like new media can work. And he went to the New York Times, and his first column in March was, I once thought I could make new media disrupt old media, but I feel like I can't make it work, and so I'm going back. And I have felt since then that he looked at us as someone who spurned him, And he didn't even tell his editors about this when he wrote the piece. I had to tell his editors. I said,
that seems irresponsible.
I think there's a major conflict of interest. And I said to his editors, I said, has he told you that he went up and down and through it, tried to buy us, we said no, and he still owns major shares of BuzzFeed? He stands to gain if Ozy goes down.
Right. And I would also think that if he brought this to the owner of BuzzFeed, this deal, that he would profit from a deal like that happening.
Enormously. And again, we said no twice. We said
Why
no.
did you guys say no?
Because I didn't feel like we shared values. I feel like they're about clickbait. I feel like they're about clickbait and social media. And I feel like, we're the kind of people who would profile and back Amanda Gorman before anyone knows who she is. I feel like they were the kind of people who, once she's famous, would be excited about her. I feel like we're the kind of people that profile Trevor Noah before he's on The Daily Show. I feel like they're the kind of people who would wait until he's on The Daily Show. We had Issa Rae at our first Ozy Fest before she was doing Insecure. They're the kind of folks who would wait until she already had a big blockbuster thing. And so I didn't feel like we were synchronized in that way. And again, I think for them, they obviously were a big deal. They, were looking to grow in other ways. They had never really done festivals. You've never really heard of BuzzFeed TV shows on Hulu or Amazon or Netflix or other places. They haven't gotten big into podcasts. And so they stayed in one lane. And I think part of what they saw in us was an opportunity to grow. But I didn't feel like Ozy should give up its independence.
What about for people that would say, because there's a lot of people out there that say, hey, people fudge their numbers all day long on YouTube and all these other sources. What for people that say, what was so bad about what he did? Yeah, he lied. He was an exec. So what is so bad to the point where the company would have to shut down?
It wasn't about that. Envy, I made a big mistake. I made many mistakes, but I made a big mistake that I hope other people don't make. Sometimes you listen. I took advice that said, hunker down, don't say anything, just go quiet and it'll go away. In my gut, I knew that's not what would happen. And so basically, after the piece came out, all of last week, all of these people with gripes, people we had fired, people who were on my show for a month and then quit and then spent the next year trying to get back on it, sending me texts as recently as 6 weeks ago, all of a sudden, they all were finding ways to do gripes. And the more other people saw people being able just to get their 15 minutes of fame, and I know it may sound crazy to some people, the more other people came out of the woodworks and doing it. And so it was almost a little bit of a feeding frenzy. So I made a mistake. My instinct was to jump in right away and have the conversation because I know we do good work. And when they start saying things like Theranos didn't even have a real product. We have 5 newsletters. We have 12 TV shows either on the air or in production. We have 6 podcasts, including the one in the top 10. The Thread's been in the top 10. We've had 3 festivals in Central Park. And so I think I should have been more on it.
What did you mean? Go ahead.
I was going to say, I see along those lines, Eugene Robinson, who was your former editor-at-large. I guess he stepped down, or I'm not sure what happened there.
We fired him.
You fired him?
Yep.
Okay, so I see now there's all these other exposés about what the culture was like working at Ozy. Yep. So can you address some of that? Because they were saying there were people who were working in insane hours and, they were saying Carlos can be very charming, but then he can flip the script on you and, get enraged. So can you address some of those allegations of what that workplace experience was like?
And it's hard to, because almost no matter what I say, it's going to sound defensive, right? But here's what I will tell you. I'll tell you that I'm the son of 2 teachers. I'll tell you that I like learning and growing. I'll tell you that over the last 8+ years, we've hired almost 1,000 people, part-time and full-time. Over half of them have been women and people of color. If you look at our team, you'll see it's the most diverse media team, one of the most diverse media teams out there. And, we have paid people well. I think we've given people good opportunities. Even some of the people who criticized said that there were good opportunities. And but I would say a couple things that I heard. People said we work long hours. Yeah, you have to do that as a startup. I wish I could say that it was otherwise, but you do. People said that you push too hard. I think I would say to that, I'm sure that there are times when I have pushed too hard. And I'm sure there are times when if I had a chance to do it all over again, I would have pushed differently. I think there are people who've said that you bully. I'd say that's definitely not true. or at least I believe that's definitely not true. Let me say it that way. It's reasonable to hear from other people because other people may have other perspectives. So I think in general we built a good culture, but you see it sometimes on Yelp or Glassdoor or other things or you see it on Twitter where it's the unhappy people who are making the loudest noise. And last week was an opportunity for anyone who had a grudge, anyone who had an axe to grind to come at it and come with it. And I hope this week, now that I'm speaking out more, I hope you'll hear from more people who felt like, you know what? Ozy gave me my first chance. You know what? It was at Ozy that I got a chance to do a podcast. It was at Ozy that I got a chance to help write my first TV show. It was at Ozy that someone finally believed in me enough to launch a new program like the Ozy Genius Awards. So of all of the things that are said, I am sure that almost like anywhere that we could be better. But if you ask me, do I think we had a toxic culture or that? No, I don't think we did.
I want to go back to Ben from the New York Times. What did you mean when you said we should have a discussion about medical records being available to the public?
I think that if someone's got a medical issue involved, and it's an incident that at that point was 6-7 months ago, in which they didn't invest, I don't know that he should report it on it.
I'm confused.
He's talking about the COO?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
I get what you're saying. Okay. I got you.
I'm not sure everybody, I mean, it is wrong. It was horrific. It was not good. And thank God they didn't invest because it would have been even more tragic if that happened. But clearly they had moved on. Clearly they had continued to advertise with us. Clearly, they looked at it as that. And I think that there's a reasonable conversation in these instances about whether or not it's okay to talk about.
But I guess I would play devil's advocate and say, I don't think he was reporting on the medical issue. He was reporting on the situation, and your response to that situation was he was having a mental health breakdown.
I won't spend a ton of time on this only because bottom line is what happened was horrific. It wasn't good. It wasn't okay, right? That's just bottom line, right? And for me personally, I lost out on what could have been a really terrific investor, right? And these are people who I've known for a long time, right? And so that's not, I don't want that to be true, right?
If anything, it prevented you from getting that investment.
100%.
Do you think about, you hear about this in a lot of companies, people lying, and you see companies do this and companies do that. Do you feel like you're being attacked more because you're a black person that owns a company? Do you feel that way at all? Not to say that you didn't make your mistakes and your company didn't make mistakes, but do you feel like you're being attacked even more because you're black?
They wouldn't say it exactly like that, but here's how I would say it. I would say that there are a lot of people in what is considered new media that have a certain vision of what new media is. And they think new media only counts if it's on Twitter and if it's snarky and if it feels like BuzzFeed or a couple of others. And they've always looked at us as, why are you doing a show like Black Women Own the Conversation? Why are you doing a show like Take on America? Why are you doing this series called The Future of Fertility? That's not real journalism. And why are you doing things like the Ozy Genius Awards? Why are you doing festivals? And that has been their perspective, that if it doesn't measure up to what they're used to and what they think is, and it's a relatively small group of people, but they're noisy and they're active and they have the mic. And so, yeah, and I clearly think that there's a racial distinction. And on top of that, do I think that people would have piled on some other entrepreneur who's put all of his money, who hasn't taken salary since COVID started so that we could keep more people employed, right? Who had built something real, including things that won Emmy? Do I think that I would have got? No, I clearly, people came after me harder. Clearly they came after me harder.
Do you fear jail time because of that? Because I've been hearing that all weekend. Oh, they're going to make an example out of Carlos. Yeah. Do you fear jail time because of that?
You know what? I'd be really disappointed if that is the case.
But what would they charge you with? I'm just curious.
I don't know, but what has happened over the last week, Envy, is that people have thrown crazy things. I mean, here's 3 or 4 of the things they said. One, they said that we're making up our numbers in terms of the audience, and instead of saying, you guys may care about website traffic only, but we don't. We care about newsletters. We care about podcasts. We care about TV show views. We care about live events. And those are our numbers. And
so those are like impressions that come from numerous different places rather than just
yeah. And so, but because
website.
it's not the way they do it, it's like saying, Amazon can only do books. Well, Amazon doesn't only do books anymore. Amazon does books. Amazon does food. Amazon does phones. They do a whole series of things. And so, yes, we started digitally, but we moved on. We started doing other things.
Well, I mean, clearly the YouTube numbers matter, though, because, I mean, your guy pretended to be a YouTube executive. So I understand and getting impressions from everywhere else, but if you were fudging the numbers specifically on YouTube, and that's what
we weren't fudging the numbers on YouTube. And you can't fudge the numbers on YouTube because the numbers on YouTube are out there for everyone to see. But one of the things you keep hearing from them, Charlamagne, is they say, well, but you paid for them. I was like, well, doesn't HBO pay to advertise a new TV show to you? Doesn't NBC pay to advertise a new show to you? Doesn't Uber pay to try and reach you? Doesn't Geico try and pay to reach you all the time? Like, stop talking about marketing like it's some illegal thing. Like, it's not. It's smart. Otherwise, what's the other choice? The other choice is you let some random algorithm choose who gets to see your stuff. I would rather take control and say, I want to make sure Angela, Envy, Charlamagne all see my stuff. And I think that's smart. I think that's smart of us to say, why would we leave it up to the algorithm? Because what does the algorithm favor? Algorithm favors clickbait. That's what it favors. It's not going to favor a serious piece on rising stars or on mental health and the climate crisis or on changes that are coming in artificial intelligence and how it might affect black and brown people. That's not what the algorithm is going to favor, right? And so Ozy does serious journalism, serious storytelling, and we are ambitious about trying to make sure that it gets to the right people.
I was going to ask you, you had another question on that point?
Yeah, I was going to say, I heard a lot of people say this week, they were shocked that Ozy considers itself black media,
right?
Because they were saying, he doesn't make any noise in the black media space. Right. Black people don't go to Ozy for black news. Like, what do you say to that?
I say that I'm a majority owner. I'm black, and I am a majority owner of our common stock, and I would say to you that we have an incredibly diverse workforce. I'd say to you that we are overrepresented from our content standpoint, including the show we won an Emmy for called Black Women Own the Conversation with Oprah and with OWN. So, look, I get that there are a bunch of people who, over the last 6 to 9 months, saw Ozy rising, right? They saw Ozy rising. There's a Dutch phrase called, tall trees catch the wind, right? They saw us rising. They were upset about it. And Roland Martin did wrong. He did wrong. That's not okay what he did. Soledad O'Brien, they were all on Twitter trying to pretend like we're not a black-owned company when he knows we are, or that it's somehow illegitimate for us to get it. So, look.
I think being black-owned is one thing, but, sometimes they put black faces in those spaces. But, what are the shows on the network hosted by black people? What's the content that's catering to a black audience?
Carlos Watson's show is hosted by a black man, right? And has a disproportionate black audience, meaning more than 11 to 12%, which is, as you know, our percentage of the U.S. population. So,
what about the podcast? How many podcasts hosted by black people?
We have had.
How many of the TV shows hosted by black people?
Yeah, great question. A majority of the TV shows hosted by black people. We have had at least one and maybe two of our podcasts, of our 6 podcasts, hosted by black people. I would tell you that when you look at our reporting staff, it's often been as much as a third black. And what was interesting is Malcolm Gladwell, who I know you guys like, I remember when he came to Ozy Fest, our Music and Ideas Festival, and he talks about this publicly. You guys should ask him about it. He said, over the years he's been to, he said, countless, hundreds of conferences and festivals. And he said when he got to Ozy Fest, he kept looking around. He kept saying, there's something different here. And then he said, you know what? I've never seen such a diverse staff. He said, I've never seen this many black and brown people working in it, that he'd gone to all these conferences. And then he said he kept trying to figure out why. He said, is it because in New York? He's like, no, I've been to lots of ones in New York. And he says, because, and then finally he said, and then I found out the reason. I met Carlos, right? Mm-hmm. And so we've always been good, Charlamagne, at having an incredibly diverse workforce that's been purposeful. It's been intentional. I've traveled the country and traveled the world to make sure that happens. We've always had fully paid internships, which lots of black and brown kids have taken good advantage of, and we get lots of good kids their first chance and hire many of them to go forward. when we started our Ozy Genius Awards, which is a summer program where we give $10,000 to college students who have big ideas, whether they want to write a book, do scientific research, etc. We're the ones that gave one of the first big opportunities to Amanda Gorman before people knew who she was, or Brandy Merriweather, or a whole series of other young people. So, who's from South Carolina, by the way, one of our Ozy Genius Award winners this year. So, look, I feel really good about what we've done and what we do in the community. I hope we continue to be an important and vibrant presence. The next 2-3 months, they are going to be difficult. You can imagine that a lot of people are shell-shocked. A lot of people are going to be, I'm not sure.
What do your investors say, like A-Rod? You know, you came up here with A-Rod one time. What are your investors saying?
I'm an investor too, by the way.
Thank you. You know what? It is. It's been a traumatic week for everybody. MV is the truth. It's been a traumatic week. What I was grateful for is over the weekend, some of the folks who were most traumatized by it, rather than just sit back, they were the ones who they got on the phone with me and they were like, "You can't go anywhere. Like, this isn't some fly-by-night thing. We've seen you work those 18-hour days that people are talking about 7 days a week. We know that you haven't taken salary in almost 3 years so that you could make sure more people didn't get laid off at the beginning of the pandemic. We've seen the good stuff you're doing. Like, don't go anywhere." They're like, "It's not going to be easy. You got to make this your," I don't know if you remember the Tylenol case back in the early 80s where Tylenol had a really bad problem and it looked for a second like they were going to go under. And rather than go under, they used it as a moment to get better. And they came back stronger and ended up much bigger. And so, you know, I would love it if one day, 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now, people look back and they say, I remember when that guy, I remember when he got knocked down, but he didn't get knocked out.
What's
right?
the plan moving forward?
So, we're gonna get back in it. We're gonna begin sharing our newsletters again. I'm gonna go to our audience and tell them where we are and what's happened and where we've been and where we're going. You'll start seeing our TV shows again, I hope, in the next month or two. Stay tuned for those. I'm excited. I think we've got a new one coming out that I'm really excited about. Actually, a friend of the show, so I'm gonna keep it quiet for a minute. But
people say they said you were lying about the TV shows too, saying that you had a deal with A&E and you didn't really have a deal with A&E.
Yeah, and that was a lie. And
I saw Monday A&E canceled the show that was planned.
They paused it and pulled it, right? And so we've had a great partnership with A&E that's been reported on in I think in Hollywood Reporter, in The Wrap, and in other places. We've done shows not only with A&E but with their sister networks, Lifetime and History Channel. And when we first started thinking about doing this Carlos Watson show this summer, it was with our good friends at A&E. And in fact, and you guys will know this terminology, we created a sizzle reel together. We went through who the first potential guests would be. We had multiple meetings, and they were in the middle of COVID, lots of things going on, and their timeline was going to be a lot slower. And so we said to them, we asked their permission, we said, respectfully, do you mind if we move this over to YouTube and get it going there and not wait? Because we felt like we had really good people who were ready to go. And so we started on YouTube, we went from there. Now, the gentleman who came up with this thing, our first producer, he's a guy who was with us for a month, and I appreciate the work that he did, but then he left. And over the last year, he's probably sent me 3 or 4 emails or texts saying, as recently as 6 weeks ago, with 6 exclamation points, saying, "Congrats, you got Matt Damon on the show. It's on Amazon.Prime. You're killing it." And now he's out there grabbing 15 minutes of fame saying, "Oh, this was, they made this up, yada, yada, yada." That's not the case. He knows we were seriously talking to A&E.
We know how long it takes for a show to actually happen, too.
Correct.
From when you first announce it to when it happens. Is it disappointing to you that more people aren't coming to your defense who've worked with you and who've had great experiences?
Yeah, and I thought about that a lot too, Angela, and I hope it'll change this week. And one of the things I realize is that even people who I know and love and people who worked hard at Ozy and been there for years, I got a text from one of my guys this weekend, one of the guys I was closest to, and he said, I felt like I had to distance myself from you this weekend because all the stuff, was so bad I had to move on. And I realized that I made a mistake last week by not getting out there because I think I needed to be in it because otherwise people believe stuff like that A&E stuff or the Sharon Osbourne thing. I don't know if you heard the Sharon Osbourne thing.
Sharon Osbourne,
or the other kind of crazy stuff. Like all this crazy stuff literally came through unfiltered. So let's see what happens over the next couple of weeks. I'm really pleased that the first person who actually helped me with the business plan over 8 years ago, she was the first person I called, and she said, "You know what? I'm I'm sad about all the crazy stuff I heard, but there's no way it can end like this. I'm in with you, and let's see what other people say.
I've heard
Can we
people
address the
say
Sharon Osbourne thing too, since you brought it up.
Yeah.
I know that you
Sharon,
guys had it.
again, you got all these people grabbing these 15 minutes of fame. Sharon Osbourne, Ozy Fest, as you know, was healthy, successful summer festival, music and ideas festival.
You guys had a clash because of the name Ozy.
Right, and she's got something called Oz Fest, and so she tried to sue us, and we're like, we're not backing down. No one wants your name Oz Fest, and no one wants to be confused with something involving Ozzy Osbourne. And
I don't know if you know, Carlos Watson got a lot more people behind him and money than me. I'm being sued, right? I was being sued by Coachella.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, Coachella is a place in California.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, they sued me for my car show, Coachella.
But he backed down. But yeah, so you can
did?
continue.
Yeah, all my attorneys tell me that we have a great chance of winning, but it's going to cost a lot of bread.
You know what? They told me the same thing, and I said, you know what? We got to go at it. And they kept trying to make me kind of say, we'll change the name. I'm like, we're not changing the name. And so in the end, we settled. We agreed to give her shares in the company, about 50,000 shares. Sharon Osbourne.
Mm-hmm.
And so jokingly, I said, because anyone who owns shares, yourself included, I said, is an investor. And
you said that in 2019.
Or whenever I said it. I said it on the air somewhere. And then Sharon Osbourne, who got booted from the talk and is looking for a moment of relevance, decided to pile on and said, Carlos Watson's trying to claim I'm an investor. What thoughtful person would say, hey, you should invest in me because Sharon Osbourne is? How does that sound? You think that's a winning pitch?
Well, I get what she's saying. Technically, she's not an investor. She was rewarded some equity, but she's not. She didn't invest.
All right, but she
didn't actually believe in what you were doing and invest in.
But I will tell you that I get your point, but you also get my point, which is that I wasn't going around telling lots of people, hey, Sharon Osbourne's an investor.
I thought you said it on TV.
I said it on TV in a joking moment when someone asked me about it, and I said something in a joking moment. But I didn't say, hey, you know what? The reason why Ozzy's a winner is because Sharon Osbourne, who got booted from the talk, that she's an investor. Like, that wouldn't actually convince anybody to get excited about it. So again,
I'm gonna be honest, Carlos, between you and your COO, y'all play too much. That's what it sounds like to me. Why y'all playing so much?
Why you an investor? He's Charlamagne.
You know what? And I beg you, don't go there because
mental health.
Yes, and what if people keep going there, Charlamagne, go down that road, which is why I did the Today Show, which is why I did Squawk Box, and I told Squawk Box, I'll stay as long as you want. I said, I'll stay as long as you want. You ask whatever you want. Said the same thing with the Today Show, right? You ask whatever you want as long as you want, because I'm here. Again, we have made mistakes, like all of us. But because you do something stupid or sloppy, that doesn't mean it's illegal, right? And can we be better with data? Of course. Can we be better with marketing? I hope we definitely can. Are there smarter things I probably could do in terms of having a good culture and being a good leader? Like, definitely. And I think we will do them. And I hope that people will look up one day and say, you know what? I can't imagine that was a good experience, but I respect the fact that they learned from it. They tackled whatever was not great, and they kept moving on. But I don't want people to get in this space where, like, they think about us as not serious people. Because, I've been working at this almost a decade, right? I put everything I have in it. I've mortgaged my house, right? I put everything I had in it, right? And this is a serious thing. You don't win Emmys for something that's a joke, right? And
but you can see why people would think that.
I can, and part of it, I think, it is because I stayed quiet last week, and because there was a pile on.
And people also aren't going to do their own research a lot. You read a headline, you read an article, and you're not going to say, let me look deeper into this. Like, you brought up Theranos earlier, and they were trying to compare Ozy Media to that, but that was a product that didn't even exist.
Correct.
Right, and they're in serious trouble for that right now. Is there anything legal that could happen to you?
I really hope not, and that's obviously not in my control. But what I know is that we are a smart, creative, innovative, talented young company. We're one of the few Black-owned companies out there, Black-owned media companies out there that I think is telling really important stories and has the creativity to do it, not just in one space, but 4 spaces: newsletters, podcasts, TV shows, festivals. That's not easy. It has taken a long time. And if they had knocked me out and knocked us out, how long was it going to take before someone else who could do the kind of things that we do? How long will it take? And are people okay that the only people who control major media companies are Rupert Murdoch or Mark Zuckerberg. I think it should be much more diverse than that, and I think it'd be a shame if Ozy went away. So part of what I hope, honestly, is that if people didn't know Ozy before, they at least give us a try now.
I heard a lot of people say last week, especially black people, that they weren't coming to your defense because they don't feel like you've ever been there for black people.
Who's saying that?
I'm not gonna say no names, but I've heard people say that.
You know,
and they said they've never even heard you speak about black until now when you're in
that's
trouble.
not true, and send them to me. Mm-hmm. Send them to me. I'm happy to have that conversation with anybody, anytime. So send them to me.
What about the 75 employees who work for Ozy? Are they keeping their jobs?
I hope that most will, but part of it will be up to them. I mean, Charlamagne, you can imagine that it was traumatic, right? It was traumatic. It was heartbreaking. And I think this is going to be a process. And I don't think it's going to be like a simple process. I think some people are going to finally be hearing me respond to some of these things because they didn't hear me respond to Sharon Osbourne or to the A&E thing or to what have you, right? And then they've got to let it sink in, and they've got to see how they feel about it, and they've got to see all of that. But I hope that many will. And even if they don't today, maybe they will in a year. Maybe they will in 3 years. Maybe they'll say, you know what? You know, I love that Ozy, came back, had its Lazarus moment, as I call it, and came back stronger.
What do you say to other black-owned media who've been fighting for ad dollars? Do you feel like you owe them an apology because your situation might affect them raising funds in the future?
You mean, do I owe them an apology because someone who wanted to buy me and wanted to benefit from buying me and I said no to did a hit job on me? No, I don't owe somebody an apology because Ben Smith, who tried to buy my company and got mad when I said no and kicked off this kind of crazy feeding frenzy, no.
So what would you say? Because people always say one black person can represent all.
So they can't, but here's what I hope will be true. And I've gotten a lot of nice notes today on LinkedIn, on Twitter, emails as well. I hope people see this black man not surrendering. I hope people see that somebody tried to knock me out. They tried to take me out. It was vicious. It wasn't good. My 86-year-old father, heard things that I didn't want him to hear. And you know what? We're taking it, going to learn from it, right? We're going to learn from it and keep going forward. Like I hope that's what people are able to say. But the truth of the matter is, Charlamagne, what will matter is what's true a year from now, right? If a year from now, Envy, you and I are talking about Ozy Fest and about a really fun Ozy Fest, and people are talking about yet another interesting new TV series that we have coming out from us, and if people are talking about newsletters they enjoy, then that's one story. If a year from now people are like, remember when he said he was going to come back and then they didn't quite come back and yada, 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 then that's a different story. So the most important thing I can do is make sure that we come back stronger and that a year from now people will be like, I respect what happened there.
I got a couple more questions. Like, since you're the person who can clearly raise the capital, you know what I'm saying? Why not connect with people in the black media space who are doing that work, like the Roland Martins, like the Black Star Network?
I would love to, and to be really clear, I appreciate what Byron Allen did. Byron Allen kicked off a really important conversation, and I appreciate that. And I'm really clear that I've benefited, and Ozy's benefited from the important conversation that he kicked off. And I hope and know and believe it's true that we also, even before this, have given back, and we will continue to give back and give forward. And whether I can help with fundraising or other ways, it's interesting, Charlamagne, one of the things even before this I want to do, and now I'll do more, is I've said that I want to do some black boot camps. You know, they used to have these books, What They Don't Teach You at Harvard Business School. I want to have something, What They Don't Teach You as a Black Entrepreneur. And fundraising is only a part of it, right? How you deal with boards, how you think about hiring, how you think sometimes about firing, how you think about taking risk, how you think about innovation, how do you think about hiring family or not hiring family, right? So I hope that we have contributed. I hope I've been really active, and I hope I'll be even more active. And if there are folks out there who think that I can be helpful to them, reach out to me, hit me on Twitter, on LinkedIn, wherever you want. Let me know, and maybe that's something even that we do together. Angela, I know you run a business as well. You know, I would love to do it with you guys if you guys were open to it.
What would you say to like a Roland or a Black Star Network who feel like they couldn't get the advertising dollars because whenever they would reach out, those people would say they already invested in it.
Don't let it be crabs in a bucket. Don't let it be crabs in a bucket.
People can invest in many different platforms.
But that's what I'm saying. I'm asking, like, what would you say?
Why should it only be one? It should be many. And I've talked to a variety of people before and said, let's work together on it. And sometimes people have wanted to, sometimes they haven't. So I'm here. I'm very ready to work with people, excited to work with people, and let's not be crabs in a bucket. Like that'd be crazy.
Is Ozy Fest coming back?
You better believe it is. It's going to be exciting. It's going to be good, and I really think, Angela, that's going to be the moment. I think the moment when the world is healthy again, when people are together, because I think when people start receiving our newsletters again, that'll be one moment. When people start to see new episodes of our show, that'll be another moment. When people are able to listen to our podcast, but the minute there's something about when it's real and it's physical and you're together, I think that will be the moment. I think that'll be the moment when people be like, you know what, Ozy came back. And we know it because we're here at Ozy Fest. We're here with all these interesting different people. We see people having fun. They will see the health of what we have when that happens.
I saw there was criticism about that too now. And I remember when this happened because I was trying to participate. Right. And so somebody said that with Ozy Fest, you took the insurance money. And I don't remember the full story behind it, but I remember there was a heat wave and you guys ended up having to cancel. Can you address that? Yeah,
so we did 3 Ozy Fest, 2016, 2017, 2018. 2019, we had planned our biggest ever. It was 2 days in Central Park. The biggest part of the park, the Great Lawn. It was going to be beautiful. John Legend, Trevor Noah, Mark Cuban, lots of other really interesting people coming through for that. And you know how excited I was. I think I came up here to see you guys for it, didn't I? Yep. And, we gave away tens of thousands of tickets to teachers, to students, to social workers, to others. And we were excited about it. And the day before, you remember there was a heat wave, and they ended up canceling a bunch of things, including Ozy Fest. I was heartbroken about that. Thankfully, we had insurance. Insurance was not as good as actually having the event, right? Because we would have made more money having the event. And on top of that we were going to have 200 credentialed members of the press for 2 days there. You guys know how valuable that is, right? And that was actually the moment when we had gotten close to breaking through and becoming a household name, certainly in New York, I think, where I think that was for many people the first time they started to hear about us. And imagine if we had an event for 2 days in which people listened to good music, they saw good comedy, they ate good food, they heard good talks. I think that would have been a game changer. So no one's more disappointed than me. And Angela, one of the things that made me mad was they tried to compare us to Fyre Festival. Fyre Festival folks never even had a festival. You guys know we've had a festival. In fact, we had 3 in person, we had 1 virtual, right? So I think what's happened the last week has been irresponsible in many ways and has been a feeding frenzy. But we're going to learn from it because inside of there were things that we could do better. And we'll do better. We'll do better on marketing. We'll do better on data. We'll do better on culture. We'll do better on all those things. And maybe even some good stuff will come out of it. Maybe some new people will reach out, right? And
people will be watching now, so it's the time, really.
You know what? It was funny. One of my investors said, the positive way to look at this is we just got $250 million worth of free advertising, right?
Ooh, all press is good press.
He was like, at least now they know Ozy. They got brand awareness, and now our job is brand positioning, right?
I'm an investor in Ozy. What if I want my money back? How do you plan to get investors their money back?
By making the company successful, and hopefully one day either I'd love it if we had the chance, and it's hard to do, but I'd love it if we had a chance to take the company public. And I'd love that, one day you look back and you were like, you know what, I believed in them, and then they had that traumatic moment, and for a second I was thinking, why did I do this? But they stuck with it, and I saw them come back, and I saw them get stronger. So I'd like to do that. But clearly, I'm sure with you and a lot of other people, I'm gonna have to earn your trust back.
How do you plan to do that? Like, what do you tell investors like me moving forward?
Just the truth, which is that this is going to be hard, but it's worth it. The last 8 years were real. We built real stuff, 5 newsletters, a dozen TV shows, either on the air on real networks like Hulu, Amazon, BBC, PBS, A&E, Lifetime, half a dozen podcasts, 3 festivals plus, that all of that is real. We're going to build it back better. And, the first 3 to 6 months will be crucial. I think, again, whatever we do has to be good work. And I think the other thing I will tell you is watch the team. I think whatever team we come back, I don't know how many of you guys are football fans. Do we have football fans in here?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah? You guys remember the Oakland Raiders?
Which one? Which
From
year?
the 70s and 80s?
Well, that's when they was L.A., but...
Yeah.
Oh, was they Oakland?
No. They were Oakland Raiders then. Look, they had a lot of people who were cast-offs, right? They had a lot of people who who at the time weren't the prize fight, but they put all that together to fight back harder. And I hope that'll end up being true about Ozy, because we got terrific people, and I hope a lot of folks will come back, and I hope a lot of folks, if we end up doing what we say we're going to do, I hope people will read and watch and listen.
Do you
Carlos,
have a how? I'm sorry.
I was going to say, Carlos, when you say there's things you could be doing better, does that include things with your leadership style, or what is it that you think needs to change?
I'll give you 4 or 5, but obviously there are many more than that. I hope that one of the key hires I'll be able to make is a chief people and talent officer, who I think will be able to help us hire, onboard people, coach and counsel people, help set good culture. So I think that'll be important. I hope on the data side, again, because we're an unusual kind of media company that doesn't just do one thing, but we do at least 4 major things: podcasts, TV shows, newsletters, festivals. I need to get an external group, a third party, to validate our numbers, and we're going to start posting them every month so that everyone can see them. We don't have anything to hide. We have good numbers. We have great people who love what we're doing, so I want that to be out there, and I think that that's really important. I think on the marketing side, I think I need to make sure that we don't spend too hard. There were times when we spun too hard, and that's a problem. That's a mistake, but that wasn't 80% of the time. That was 10 or 20% of the time. I'm not saying that makes it okay, but I'm saying it's important for people to have some sense of context and some proportion about it. So those are at least 3 of the things. And then, most importantly, I think I just have to spend time with the team, because if the team doesn't believe, and if they don't care, and if they're not inspired, and if they can't trust, then nothing's going to happen.
So when you said on the Today Show yesterday morning with Craig Melvin that you don't plan to shut down, that's the how, what you just explained.
That's the how. And but you know what? It's Charlamagne, it's going to be interesting, because it's going to be rocky. It's going to be rocky, and that the next 2, 3, 4 weeks, it's not like Ben Smith and his buddies are going to stay quiet. They're going to fire back. They're going to have a whole list of things, but this time I'm not going to stay quiet. This time I'm going to ask you guys to come back. I'm going to ask other places to come back, and let's get into it then, right? And by the way, that doesn't mean we don't make mistakes, but let's get into it. I don't want people smearing our name, taking one thing that may be off and trying to make it seem like it's everything about us that's off.
Do you fear, being in any trouble with the SEC or facing any other legal troubles?
I
asked you that earlier about jail. But
you did. I mean, look. I'm sure people will look into it. I'm sure Goldman looked into it. The fact that Goldman looked into it and then 3 to 4 months later did a pretty big advertising buy with us probably says that the fact that YouTube and Google looked into it and a couple months later continued to work with us, and in fact Google made an offer to invest in Ozy to the tunes of tens of millions of dollars, probably tells me that they looked into it as well. So hopefully all those things matter, and we move on and we become a good example of a modern media company, and a Black-owned modern media company.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Well, Carlos Watson, we appreciate you for joining
us.
us.
Is there anything else? Because, people are really looking under the hood right now. So if there's anything that you need to let people know, let them know.
I'm sure there's more, and because I'm not perfect and nobody's perfect. So let me say that again. Like, we definitely made mistakes. 100% we made mistakes, and I'm not happy about them. I own them. I'm the CEO. In the end, I'm responsible for everything that happens, so that's not okay when they happen, and I'm sure people will come up with more. But the question for me is, do we have an open heart and an open mind? Are we going to learn? Are we going to listen? Are we going to be good with each other? And are we going to ultimately do things that's worth people's time? And I hope we will. I believe we will.
Yeah, I think the one thing I think people will probably pick apart is they're going to really look and see if this is a black media company, not just a company owned by a black person. Right. They want to know, out of those 75 employees, how many were black and brown. They're going to look and see, how many shows were hosted by black people. Where's the black content that caters to a black audience? Like,
you know what? They should. They should. I'm excited about that, and that's a good thing. And again, I'm sure we have things to learn at and get better at. But I'm proud of the Emmy that we won, right? I'm proud of the series that we have. I'm proud of the people that we've hired. I'm proud of the people that we employ even part-time. Like I said, come to Ozy Fest and see who's working. Come to our TV show down in Atlanta and see who's on the crew, right? Like, look through it. I'd be happy for people to do it. And I'd be happy for people to compare it apples to apples.
Are you going to talk to some of these people that's really criticizing you, like the Roland Martins? Would you sit down with Roland?
Would love to.
Okay.
Love to.
Roland, we're going to make that happen.
And, I was disappointed in Roland, if I'm honest.
Okay.
I was disappointed in him, but you know what? Maybe I was wrong, and so I'm happy to learn and grow.
What disappointed you the most?
I thought that I thought it was a little bit of a crabs in the bucket sort of thing. I thought that immediately he saw us in trouble, and he just, more than anyone, he was the one retweeting and posting, and it was almost assassination-like. And given his experience at CNN and what happened to him, I thought he'd be the last person being involved in that kind of thing. And so, it is what it is, and I've got to learn from that, and I've got to get better. But if you ever see me doing that, let me know if you see me doing that. I hope you will never see me doing that. I hope even if we have differences, you and I will have the conversation. I won't be out there trying to assassinate people in public along with the mob.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
All right. Yeah. Well, it's Carlos Watson. It's the Breakfast Club. Good morning.